There's two more. Let me try to get through them quickly. This is kind of similar. I'm going to have to go through it quick, and I won't be able to read anything. But number 6 is, if Jesus was fully God and fully man, wouldn't that make it impossible for him to sin? If Jesus was fully God and fully man, wouldn't that make it impossible for him to sin? So this is, again, the age-long debate. It goes all the way back to the beginning of the church, of what is called peccability versus impeccability. Peccability means that Jesus was able to sin. It was possible for him to sin. That's the peccability view. That comes from a Latin word. And then impeccability means that Jesus was not able to sin. Okay, it was impossible for Jesus to sin. So was it possible for Jesus to sin or not possible? I take the view of impeccability, meaning it was not possible for Jesus to sin. Okay, let me explain why. Let me first give the argument of the peccability view, that it was possible for Jesus to sin. Those who take the view of peccability, they argue and they say, Jesus could not really have been tempted like us if he was not able to sin, right? They say Jesus couldn't have been tempted like we are if he wasn't able to sin. Like Hebrews tells us, that he was tempted in all points just like as we are, yet without sin. And so they say, see, if Jesus was really able to be tempted like we are, then it would have been possible for him to sin. Well, I would disagree with that. I do believe it does say that Jesus was tempted in all points like as we are, even though he didn't sin. But I believe that he could still, even though he wasn't able to sin, I believe that he could still feel the full weight of that temptation. I believe that he could still, and actually he felt the temptation far worse than what we feel. You know why? Because when you carry out the temptation that you're faced with, and you never succumb to it, you never give in to that temptation, guess what you felt? You felt the full weight of it. And that's what it is with Jesus. Jesus felt the full weight of every temptation that was brought his way because he never succumbed to it. And so he felt it in its max. And so he could surely feel the temptation, even though it was impossible for him to sin. This is why I think it was impossible for Jesus to sin. Because Jesus was fully man, yes, but also fully God. And imagine this. Imagine this is Jesus' humanity, okay? The temptation enters, all right? The temptation enters here. And then it's passing through his humanity, and he's feeling that temptation, feeling that temptation, feeling that temptation, feeling that temptation. But also he has his divine nature, okay? Imagine this is his divinity. That temptation is going to, and I believe, was it possible in Jesus' humanity to sin? I would say yes. But in his divinity, no. Because that temptation is going to hit this impassable wall right here that makes it impossible for him to sin. Because the possibility of Jesus being able to sin is the possibility of God being able to sin. And the moment that God sins, he no longer is God. That, to me, my friend, is an impossibility. I just can't accept that notion that Jesus could have sinned. And I think that in his divinity, there was this impassable wall where that temptation hit and said, bonk, and he could not have sinned. Because God cannot cease to be God. The Bible tells us that God can't even be tempted with sin. So I think it's impossible that Jesus was able to sin. And I could read, I was going to read some thoughts on it, but I think that, again, Jesus did have a human nature. He had the ability to sin in his human nature like Adam did. Innocent, but, he was sinless at some point, but then he chose to sin. I think that Jesus' human nature was like that, but I believe that once that temptation hit his divine nature, he was not able to sin. So I take the impeccability view, though it is a difficult one, but I think that is my best explanation on that. So